Henry VIII burnt with an ambition to be a true Renaissance prince, and that meant on the battlefield as much as at home and at court.
He doesn't go to war that often. He'd like to have gone to war much more than he did. His first war against France in 1513 is successful in that he does conquer territory.
He conquered Tournai and Terouanne in France in 1513. Terouanne he gave away straight away to his ally, the Emperor Maximilian. Tournai he sold back to the French 5 years later. Similarly, he conquered Boulogne in France in 1544, and in 1550 his son's councillors had to give it back to the French.
What war meant for Henry VIII was that it was both an expression of his dynastic ambition and a thirst for personal glory, and also part of the political necessity of being a European Tudor monarch. Wars were often short campaigns fought for small gains, and they were over fairly quickly, although they were frequently reoccurring. And at the end of the war, you all sat down around the table and you divvied up the rewards.
I think for Henry VIII, the war is very much connected with reputation. He's a very conservative monarch in many ways. His whole upbringing has been full of, the idealism of chivalry. I've mentioned Henry V as, I suppose the poster on his bedroom wall, as it were, would have been not the captain of the English football team, but Henry V. He wants desperately to emulate Henry and to be like him. And so it's for all kings. Don't forget, he's part of a generation of 3 monarchs who all come to the throne within a few years of each other. Henry, Francis I of France, Charles V, who becomes the Holy Roman Emperor, all in the 1520s, quite young men, all brought up in a very similar way. So war is a way of testing his personal skills. It's the reason why Henry spends so much time in his early years jousting and involved in tournaments, because it's a kind of paramilitary combat which allows him to show off to his nobility and his gentry as a warrior leader, because being able to lead people in battle is the greatest form of engendering respect, etc. And so that's really what war is for Henry.
There is a painting called The Battle of the Spurs, which records a moment during Henry VIII's 1513 campaign against the French, when the English forces famously routed the French cavalry, forced them to turn around and flee the battlefield so that all that could be seen was the glinting lights from their shining spurs as they ran away. And in this painting of this moment of this battle, Henry VIII is depicted in the midst of the fighting at the front of his forces. But this is pure fiction. Henry VIII was not allowed to lead his troops into battle. It was too dangerous, and the potential fatality would be too great a risk for the nascent Tudor dynasty.
So compared with the people that Henry really admired, Edward III and Henry V, great conquering English kings in France, Henry wasn't really very successful.
So Henry's actual battle experience in the early part of the reign is not great. Towards the end of the reign, in 1544, he invades France again personally, and takes the city of Boulogne from Francis. That results in a counterattack by the French against Southampton, Portsmouth in 1545, the naval skirmish where Henry loses the Mary Rose in front of his eyes.
On the other hand, he did manage to fight big wars on a European scale that got him noticed, and he managed to do it with a country which was much smaller than the countries that he was fighting against. The population of France was maybe 5 or 6 times the population of England. It had tax revenues to match. It had a permanent standing army. Henry didn't have any of those things, but he managed to fight the French and get himself taken seriously.